Hi and welcome back. In the previous video, we inserted the relevant weather icons for the block with a 5-day forecast. So now we need to add a relevant weekday. In fact, we have already done it in this block where we found out the current weekday. As you may remember, we do this with the help of the function called day-of-week. So we just need to make some changes to this function and it will work for the block with the 5-day forecast as well. But before we do this, let me remind you that computers store time in milliseconds. 1 second has 1000 milliseconds. 2 seconds have 2000 milliseconds, and so on. Also, I would like to show you what we need to remember when we work with the date objects in JavaScript. As you can see, it is mentioned that a JavaScript date is fundamentally specified as the number of milliseconds that have elapsed since midnight January 1, 1970 UTC. That's why, for instance, date.now returns the numeric value corresponding to the current time. The number of milliseconds elapsed since January 1, 1970 000000 UTC, with leap seconds ignored. Alright, so now that you know this information, we can start making adjustments to the day-of-week function. In the key called dt, the number of seconds elapsed since January 1, 1970 is stored. Please notice the number is in seconds, not in milliseconds. It's very important. Right now, when there is nothing inside of the parenthesis, the current date is passed to this function. As a result, we get the current weekday. So let's make a change and pass the value of dt to the function, and here we also add dt. Then to add the default value, we type in the equal sign and new day.getTime. So now, if we have the dt key, its value will be passed to the function. If not, the default value, which is new day.getTime, will be used. I should draw your attention to the fact that the value of dt is in seconds elapsed in January 1, 1970. But new day.getTime returns the numbers of milliseconds elapsed since January 1, 1970. So once more, dt is in seconds, while new day.getTime is in milliseconds. Okay, in the function called updateForecast, we type in letDay. Then we call the day-of-week function. Pass the value of the day variable, and we need to use this key called dt. Since the value of dt is in seconds, we multiply it by 1000. By doing so, we convert seconds into milliseconds. Excellent. Now we know the current weekday and the weekdays of the 5-day forecast. The next thing is to find out the temperature on this weekday. To do this, copy this code. And then we type in letTemp and assign what we've just copied. Don't forget to replace data with day. And here as well. The 5-day forecast is composed of 5 articles. So now out of this, we're going to create an article. To do this, let's copy the code of any article. Then create a variable called forecastItem. And in the backticks, please pay attention to this, you need to use backticks. We paste what we've copied before. We need to insert the value of icon URL instead of this. So we type in the $, then a pair of curly brackets and icon URL. The next thing is to insert the right value for the alt attribute. We need weather, the element with the 0 index number, and then the value of description. So we add the $, and a pair of curly brackets, and then day.weather 0 description. After that, we have to insert the value for the h3 tag. It has to be a weekday. So the $, a pair of curly brackets, and we add day. Right here, we need to add the temperature of the weekday. Type in the $, a pair of curly brackets, and then temperature. Finally, we need to insert the value of forecast item inside a forecast block. That's why we type in forecast block. Now, to convert this HTML into the DOM object and then insert it inside a forecast block, we call this function insert adjacent HTML. This function has two arguments. First, we need to specify where we want to insert our element. We select before end. We pass forecast item as the second argument. Alright, let's see how it works. Refresh the page. New York. Hit enter. And nothing changed. Let's check why that is. The error message says that on line 75, identifier day has already been declared. So we simply change day to day name. Here we also change the day name. Please notice that right here we have temp, while here we have temperature. That's why we need to replace temp with temperature. Save and refresh the page. Search for New York. In this part, the information has been updated, but here it hasn't been updated. Well, there are no error messages in the console. Aha, we create the update forecast function, but we didn't call it. So as soon as we get the result from the function called getForecastByCityID, we need to call the update forecast function. To do this, out of the getForecastByCityID function, we need to return the daily forecast. So we replace console.log daily with return daily. Now we need to assign the result to the variable called forecast. Since inside of the getForecastByCityID function, we use an asynchronous code, we must add the await keyword. Then we call the update forecast function. And we pass the value of the forecast variable to this function. Let's check it out. Well, these image icons have not been displayed properly. Let's inspect. We see 04D2X in the URL. But we need to have the @ symbol before the 2x. We simply forgot to add the @ symbol. Let's fix this. Here we add the @ symbol. Then save and refresh the page. Excellent. Now it works. Let's search for another city. For instance, London. Great. Everything works nicely. This icon has to be also changing depending on the weather conditions, but so far it doesn't. We will make it work in the next lesson. Alright, that's all for this video. See you in the next one.